So as folks are joining, I just want to share there is a poll chat, a poll link in the Zoom chat. And the question is, what is one intention that you have for the new year in your work life? So you can just take a few seconds to answer that, and then we will get started. Thank you to those who are just joining now. We have a poll question in the chat. If you could please click on the link and add your answers in there, and we'll share it back with the group. Thank you. If we go to the next slide, I think we have the poll question. Great. If you could please share with us one intention that you have for the new year in your work life. Okay, I will go ahead and share my screen because there are some answers coming in here. Give me one moment. Learn more through webinars and podcasts. I mean, please share in the Zoom chat some great podcasts that you have going on. Such great gratitude for awesome colleagues as the new year unfolds, making sure to let them know in that. Thank you so much. That is a great New Year's intention. Walk 10,000 steps a day for 365 days, very relatable. Flexibility, absolutely. To see projects that have only appeared on paper come to fruition. Create tools to evaluate equitable capital improvement plans, investments across, better engage the Latino community, focus on mission and vision, grow and nurture interpersonal connections with my work group, continue to improve listening skills, expand hiking safety messaging in English and Spanish. Really excited to learn more about that in the breakout groups. Bring more amenities to our residents. Great. Well, I encourage you to continue to populate that because, oh, sorry, I was about to move on. Eat less sugar at work. I think that's kind of impossible, but just wanted to call that one out. Great. Well, if you could continue to populate these, we love just hearing from the group. You know, we enter breakout groups and we don't get to all meet each other. So it's great to get a little smattering of it through this poll. And we can just go back to the presentation, please. And I'll just share our agenda for today. Great, thank you. So we will just start off with a quick framing of why we brought everyone to this room on what does community outreach mean? How does it look in your different respective contexts? And then we will have a presentation from the Park Listeners Program in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And then we've reserved 30 minutes for breakout groups. And in each of your groups, there will be a TPL facilitator to guide the conversation. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Geneva. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I'm still giggling because I know who said the eat less sugar at work, and I'm looking at you. So I want to thank all of you for joining today. And to those who came to the kickoff, I have to say I'm especially grateful to you for showing up here, but also really showing up in your communities. We heard a lot of amazing stories from across the country in our kickoff session, and also some really honest challenges and dreams. And I wanted to take a second to share some of those out. So the first discussion question we covered was, what is something that your agency is doing that you're proud of to work better with communities? And there were so many answers, but just a couple highlights. One, in Oakland, a 5-acre park was returned to the Ohlone tribe, who can now act as stewards on their ancestral land. In Sacramento, we heard about the parks and rec centers and how they made a quick pivot from spaces of recreation to sites for COVID first response, such as testing sites, PPE distribution, and childcare for frontline workers. And it's worth noting that these stories are unique, but there's similar things happening across the country. In fact, in 2021, the 2021 Park Score survey found that 57 of the top 100 largest parks agencies said they use park sites for COVID response, just further underscoring the role of parks as critical health infrastructure. The next question we asked was, what would you need to scale these practices to other communities? We heard about a need for standardization of partnership models, a need for evaluation tools for community engagement, and a need for structures to compensate community members. And I have to say, I'm really excited that those are some of the priorities, because those are also our priorities for this track. And we hope to cover all of these topics over the next 6 months. And lastly, we discussed policies you've used that make this work possible. And one of the things that really stood out to us was a need for designated community engagement teams. Baltimore, for instance, has an established team for community engagement within the Parks Department. Other cities like Atlanta, Portland, and Los Angeles have interagency community engagement teams shared with the Health Department, the Planning Department, or the Department of Transportation. And we'll be sending out a more comprehensive synthesis of our kickoff later this month, and look forward to your feedback. So moving on from generally our first session, what is community engagement? We want to spend today exploring, what does community outreach mean? So first, I'd like to offer that at TPL, we see outreach as laying the foundation for community engagement. We do this by building relationships and trust with the community to prepare for deep work together. Carrie Simmons, who spoke last time about Mettel Park in Wenatchee, Washington, often likens community outreach to starting a new friendship. Be in the community often, not just when you're throwing your own event. Spend casual and structured time with people to get to know them, and never show up empty-handed, but bring a gift, even if it's just something like a coffee. We recognize that even after laying this foundation, there's a ton of pre-work to know who's in the community by mapping out assets, leaders, and understanding timely issues, such as, timely issues. And outreach is really about checking our assumptions and hearing directly from the community. But how do you authentically hear from the community? There's a lot of barriers that we've already heard about, such as reaching a representative population, asking the right question, getting honest feedback, and truly meeting the community where they are. And today, we are going to hear just one approach of hundreds happening, both in TPL and in your agencies, on how to overcome some of those barriers. And we'll be focusing on Chattanooga, and we hope to hear from you all about what you're doing too. So I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers. I'm going to stop sharing my slide for a minute and maybe let you see some of them. So first off, we have Blythe. Blythe, I do not remember your last name. Blythe Bailey, hello. He is the Director of Design and Connectivity for the Department of Parks and Outdoors in Chattanooga. We have Daniela Paz-Peterson, the Senior Program Manager in Community Strategies, Senior Advisor at the Trust for Public Lands. We have Fabiana Gaspar, Parks Listener, Community Leader at Trust for Public Lands, and Claribel Hernandez, who is also a Parks Listener, Community Leader at Trust for Public Lands. Welcome, bienvenidos, and thank you for offering your time to share your experiences on meaningfully reaching your communities in Chattanooga. So they'll be presenting for the next 30 minutes, and we invite you to ask questions in the chat throughout, and we'll get to have about 10 minutes for Q&A and share some of the questions that you have. So I will share my screen again. 1 second.
Yes. No.
And let Blythe take it from here.
Hey, everybody, it's great to see some familiar faces. I'm going to really make 2 points, but I'm going to add a third just to sort of introduce myself. I'm an architect by profession, and one of the reasons that I love the work that I do in parks and public work is because in architecture, you tend to make drawings that developers then use to go build buildings. You're supposed to be making drawings for a building that will be used by people and that will be maintained. But most of our work in architecture is mostly in the making of the building. We don't spend a whole lot of time in the programming of the building or the activities or how the building gets used or how it gets maintained. In public work, all of those things are part and parcel. The design is much less meaningful if it's not used by the general public. And we all know that if you don't do a good job of maintaining it, it also reflects back on that design. So it's a three-part thing from a design standpoint, where you design the thing, you maintain the thing, but the most important aspect of it is, are people using it, and are we using it in as a variety of ways as possible? So with that said, we're doing a Parks and Outdoors plan in Chattanooga right now. And as an architect, or if I were an engineer, or if I were a planner, or if I were a public engagement professional, I would be doing that work and measuring it based on the amount of time that I spend on it. Professionals like architects and engineers, we make our living being compensated for the time in which we provide our expertise. Community members also have an expertise because they're representatives of their communities. They are trusted in ways that are valuable to a planning process that I can't replicate. They know their community and they're trusted by that community in ways that professionals who work all over the place just can't do. So just like I have a unique and valuable expertise as an architect, community members have an expertise that is essential and valuable to the process of how to design and build the best park and public space system for our city. So community members deserve to be paid for that specific expertise. That's the first point that I want to make. You go to the next slide, Geneva. So if you've heard Chattanooga's story at any point in the last 30 or so years, you've probably heard something that goes like this. Walter Cronkite in 1969 proclaimed Chattanooga to be the dirtiest city in America. Chattanooga then used a community engagement approach in which we held public events to reintroduce public spaces to the community. There's a photograph of a 1980s event in our downtown that wouldn't be possible today because we built a building in that location. We hosted public meetings. We garnered input from everyone as to what we should focus on to turn our community around or make it better. We've done this again and again and have a name for the process. You can go to the next slide, please. We call that process the Chattanooga Way. And that's shorthand for the process that we developed in the 80s that we've used again and again. We host public meetings. As I said, we use a lot of Post-it notes. We've gotten really familiar with Mentimeter. Recommendations are developed, plans are drawn. We invest and we open shiny new public spaces and destinations. And make no mistake, I've been doing this work in Chattanooga and it's my hometown for 20 years. We have gotten great results from this approach. Our iconic pedestrian-only Walnut Street Bridge on the left was saved from the wrecking ball and today is one of the most widely and diversely used public spaces in the city. Our Tennessee Aquarium on the right, and actually in almost all of the photographs, catalyzed hundreds of millions of dollars in reinvestment on our riverfront. Thousands of new residents live in our downtown. They enjoy the Riverwalk for transportation, and they make use of the splendid outdoor setting that is our city. Chattanooga is widely regarded as an urban design success story. We were named Outside Magazine's best town ever twice. Next slide. But something's amiss. It's not been uncommon in the last 9 years, and I can say this myself because I've done it. When you say the words Chattanooga Way to a public audience, some people in the audience roll their eyes. A multi-part expose in our newspaper was done several years ago that cast doubt on, is this actually the full story? Our new parks director, within a month of being here, my boss, recognized immediately that some parts of our parks and public space systems are still as deserving of criticism from a national news broadcaster as our city as a whole was deserving of it in 1969. It's widely considered in Chattanooga that our signature parks are excellent and have benefited us greatly, but that those benefits have not extended to much of our outlying city. especially to communities and cultures that have traditionally been underrepresented. All that said, our POP, which is our Parks and Outdoors Plan, has made us a strong commitment to equity. One essential and critical component, going back to my first comment, is the work that we do needs to do more for more people. We need to go beyond the Chattanooga way. We need to meet people where they are. We need to create opportunities for people in their comfort zones to tell us what they think about their parks and public spaces, so that the spaces that we design for the future can be used for and benefited by as many people in Chattanooga as possible. Daniela.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniela Paz Peterson. I'm descendant of the Mapuche people from Chile. Now I'm sitting here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm here with two park listeners on my right, but I'm going to introduce you to them a little in a few more minutes. So what I'm going to talk now is, so I'm very aware and I very appreciate what Blai shared about our city. Yes, we have challenges, but we have a lot of opportunities. So almost a year ago, we sat down with the Park and Outdoor people, and we started talking about what are the challenges, what was coming for this year. And one of the things that they recognize is like how hard or challenging is to include neighbors, community members into processes. And one of them is like simple as like payment. How do you pay neighbors? How hard is to, enter the system in the city? So we listened to that and we came back and said, I think we can actually help out on that. So Park Listeners is a program that was created in Hawaii by our former colleague Rose. She went through the same challenges to how you include people, neighbors in our processes. So the way that, Park Listeners is a program. We did the first one here in Chattanooga. She created the concept and we just scale up this concept. So it's basically neighbors talking to neighbors. And Geneva, you can go to the next one. If it's Geneva, the one that is doing the PowerPoint, thank you. So it's neighbors talking to neighbors. It's simple, but it doesn't mean that it's not complex and it doesn't have depth. But we really want to understand people's reality, and this is a good way to do it. So the main goal is to understand the lived experiences of park users and residents in the Chattanooga area. So what we want to do in the next minutes is really to encourage you to think about how to create structures that allows you to involve neighbors, community members from their expertise. So one of the ways to do that can be Park Listeners. So Park Listeners is a structure that allows you to sustain the work, and it's based on some principles. So the main one is that neighbors are experts in their own reality. So they are at the center of this. We develop trust with a program that can sustain on time. It's a sustainable process. And what I mean by this, we normally go to communities when we need them, when we need the feedback. So we put the terms, we decide when to talk, how to talk, and the color of the Post-it notes. So with a program like this, we want to shift that from more extractive to more relational. So we go there. The Park and Outdoor Planning was a great opportunity to test it out. We help do recollect service, but we are not done yet. We're going back with the same Park Listeners to share the results. So as you see, we want more like a process, more than just a one-time or very like kind of surgery, like it's here and there, and then you're gone. And then with this, bringing neighbors into your strategy, what happened? You diversify your strategy. And I'm gonna get in more details into that. So next slide, please. So all of this sounds great, I guess, for you. It sounds great to me when they explain it, but it's some things that can actually make it better. So with my coworker David, he's like, oh, you're always thinking in design, and he's right. I'm always thinking in design for multiple reasons, because white have to be ugly. And one of them, it's, okay. No, and it's not a program or organization that is standalone. It lives inside the Trust for Public Land. So it's a program of the Trust for Public Land to support the city of Chattanooga. And moving forward, it's a program that is going to help us into our own strategies. So I define it like our army. So when you're thinking about a project, who is the first person who is the first one that goes to meet community, we're thinking that park listeners can be that person. So we started with design, thinking about, as a woman of color, when I'm in a public space, I feel very exposed depending on the park, the time, and many things. So we went to a local designer to think about how we can make them more visible and kind of make them feel more comfortable in kind of places that they are not super, I mean, you can feel unsafe. I'm gonna go to the next one. So after talking with the city, the park and outdoor planning was running. We saw that we were missing some kind of representation from some zip codes. So what we did, we reached out to our community members that we already knew, and then they connected with other community members. So we have 12 park listeners from different neighborhoods from our city. We trained them about how to take service, about how to kind of like encounter another person and how not to bias the service. Result was, for this particular support, the park and outdoor planning effort from the city of Chattanooga, we collected over 385 surveys. We have 5 weeks of observations in the field. We have over 100 visits to local parks, 300 hours of observations, and we were able to give the city a report with statistics, with the surveys, and also with field observation and all the conversations that you normally have when you are, in the field. So next slide, please. I hope that this was helpful because it's a lot of information. It was a lot of experiences and learnings. But what I want to really do, the platform survey was like given to us. That's the wrong one. I think it's the next one. So the survey was made by the city and we implemented. Sorry, something's going on with the PowerPoint. In future engagement, we are designing our own questions, that one. So the 12 park listeners that we work in this first try, this pilot, were 12. 80 of them spoke 2 languages and 2 of them spoke or can understand 3 languages. And the sisters are here with me today to share about their experience. I'm deeply honored to work with them and learn different perspectives. What I was saying before, when you bring diverse perspective, diverse people, you diversify your strategy, and you have to have a structure that allows you to trust people. So when you design a program, it can be like this, you have to leave room for people to to put out there what they know, to a space that they can share their expertise. Just creating a program to bring neighbors is not enough. The program has to respect their expertise, has to allow them to express themselves, and it has to be a place that trust can be developed. So hopefully all the things that I'm saying, I think it really kind of describe our relationship. I really admire them. And as I told them before, something very particular is happening right now, what I'm going to point out. I'm an indigenous descent, I'm Mapuche. And here with 2 women that are Mayan descent, and their people speaks the language is Cajobal dialect. And one of the things that I learned through this, it's the way that they ask, how are you, is they ask you, how is your gut doing, or how is your heart doing? And that is also changing our own program. We really want to focus on how people are doing in a very holistic way, and they are helping us to do that. So I'm here with Fabiana Gaspar and Claribel Hernandez. They were 2 park listeners that helped us to recollect surveys and also to have observations. So Claribel and Fabiana are going to share you about their experience, and I really, from my heart, really want to thank you for trusting us and be part of this program. So here is Claribel.
Honey, hello. My name is Claribel Hernandez. I'm a stay-home mom with 4 beautiful children.
Papin UNB. Hello, everyone. My name is Fabiana. Thank you guys for having us over and be part of this panel that we're partnering with TPL. And we just want to share who we are in the community. Our family experienced the first hand of the growth of the Latino community here in Chattanooga. And not just the Latino community, but the Guatemalan community who Chattanooga is learning about that all Guatemalans English is not their second language, it's actually their third language. And so because Spanish is the second language and then English is our third. And so that's what we have experienced here in Chattanooga. But we want to share some of our stories, our family stories through the parks. Clarabelle, would you like to share a story about our family or especially our parents when they take us to the park?
Yes, having parents that work through life and everything, trying to maintain their 6 children. We're siblings of 6. My parents worked a lot, so it was very hard for them to take us to the parks or take us out, knowing that it was hard to keep a job to maintain us. So my dad took his made sure and made it his priority to take his kids to the park, to have that kind of relationship with his kids. If you can go to the other slide, we have a picture where we were small, and we grew up in Colorado, and he always loved to take pictures. So we have a picture of there when we were small, from maybe your left to the bottom. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's us when we were small, and my dad would always take us to the parks. When we moved here to Chattanooga, it was hard to find a good park for us to play around, and my dad felt safe to take us. And there was one particular park that we loved to go, and my dad would always spend time with us and played with us, while my mom actually had the ability to have a time for herself to walk around the little track that they had around the park. And it was an amazing kind of experience when you're a child to have that unit, love and caring from your parents, knowing that they had a busy schedule, and they had that time to take us to the park. So it's a very good memory that we have as a children.
My mom trying to consider her mental health and just trying to be there for us. And so in order for her to do that, she needs some time by herself. What was the greatest opportunity for you to be part of Parkland?
Park listeners helped me so much. Like I said, I'm a stay-home mom, so it was very hard for me to get a job and get in that work schedule to have something to work for me and work for my kids. So park listeners helped me to go to work, but have my kids with me while I go and do these surveys. They could come with me and play in the parks, and I could do the surveys and work at the same time. So it was a very, very good a source for me to work in. And I felt safe knowing that my kids were with me and I could still work and be part of park listeners. It was a very good experience. Fabi, what was your experience with park listeners in the community?
Well, I'm a person who thinks outside of the box all the time, and my ideas come on in the moment. So our niece actually participated in park listeners. She was a volunteer and she helped a lot as well. And there was one afternoon, we decided we're going to go to this spot that our cousin made available for us to come to do the surveys, and it was in her store. But it started pouring rain, and we were like, what are we going to do? We have all these surveys left, and we need more men to actually fill out the Latino men in the community to fill out the surveys. We have been having a bunch of Latino women filling it out, and so my brain I saw across the street a salon, and I was like, that's my friend's salon. I'm gonna go over and ask her if we can ask her to see if we can go into her salon and do the surveys there. And so thankfully my friend gave us the space to do the surveys there, and there were so many men in the salon because there was a barber shop specifically for the men in that salon. And at first the men were ignoring us because we were women, and they were, no, thank you, no, thank you. This is too much for us to fill out as well. And I was like, well, no worries, I have my time. And I actually would like to invite you guys for a drink. What do you guys like? You guys want jarritos? Do you guys want some Coca-Cola? And they were like, for real? They were so shocked. It's like, are you gonna invite us for a drink? Yes. I'll take your orders right now. I'll go get them and I'll be back and we could have a discussion about park listing. What is these surveys about? We could talk about more about the parks here in Chattanooga. And so I went to go ahead and go grab them and came back, and they hesitated again, and they're like, no, maybe not today. And I was like, actually, these surveys are very important, and especially for you guys to be heard in the city of Chattanooga. And we want to better the parks in Chattanooga. Do you guys have any thoughts of how to better the parks here in Chattanooga? And they're like, actually, we do. And so one man is like, I have a lot of comments to do. So I'll do the surveys as long as you help me out with how to fill these surveys out. And I was like, yeah, I would gladly. And so I started opening the jarritos and giving them, as they were waiting for their appointment, I started giving the jarritos away, and then started the surveys, the next question to the next question. And then they were more open, and I started hearing stories about these men, how they come out late from work. They get off at 9 o'clock p.m. and they don't have no time to go spend time with their families, and there's no hardly lights outside of these parks, so they prefer to stay home where there's lights for their children to spend time. And so it's like, that's a great point. How about we put that in the comments that we need lights in parks and during these time hours for you guys to be having opportunity to spend time in the parks. And they felt that they were not heard, and I affirmed them and reaffirmed them that their voice, their opinions are important, even though they felt like they're migrants or immigrants here in the city, but they're also their opinions matter. So that's part of the story that I wanted to share, because one of the things that I've learned in park listeners is I don't take no for an answer, and I was persistent, because our Guatemalan community are very reserved, and also they have also this trauma back home as being the indigenous community, that their voice doesn't matter. And so that was why the reason I needed to push and push and push, because I want them to know that their opinions and their voice, their opinions matter, and their voice are wanted to be heard from park listeners. So yeah, Clarabelle, what was something that you see now that you have went through the park listeners? What was something that you see differently now as a community member?
And it's amazing how you get an eye-opening when you're in a community like this with park listeners. I didn't know so much as parks. I just knew one specific park that I used to like to go when I was children, where my dad took us, so I took my children there. But now that I'm involved with this community of park listeners, I see the parks very different now. Every time I'm driving to a destination or somewhere, and I see a park that's like abandoned, it doesn't have like lights or sidewalks. Those are little things that I see now that I'm involved in this community of park listeners. I see parks differently now. Now I see that it's very important with parks to have lights, sidewalks, a clean park for the community to play in that park. It needs to be clean. And I feel like a lot of kids would love that, to see their park that they live in, they could go to and play. But yeah, now it's an eye-opening to me. Every time I'm driving somewhere, I see things that park do need, that I didn't used to see. But now it's like an eye-opening of park listeners, and it's very important for every community to have a park to go to and take their kids. So yeah.
Yes, that's, I as well will affirm that as well. I have more perspective, what to look out, what parks need, but also what our community are sharing to us and making sure we bring those to the TPL and help us out how we can resolve these concerns of our community. Yes, and we would like to share a video of my dad playing with his grandchildren. He did it with us, but now he does it. Our family likes to go out a lot as well, so I'm going to share the video. We're playing dodgeball with our nieces.
So much. So not to add what they say, but add something from my side. We didn't expect for people to go to beauty salons, so that it was something that wasn't prescribed, but to the point that we really wanted to allow for that to happen. So the idea is not for you to go, I'm gonna go to beauty salons. The point here is to trust with the people that you're working with and allow to create new strategies to get to places that normally you're not gonna get. And to talk about parks, we don't have to be just in parks. It's a reason that people are not going to parks. So we need to go where people are. So those are kind of like, at least one of the learnings from the program. And from here, Geneva, Christina, how do we do the questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Fabian. Thank you, Claribel. So we have a good amount of time for some Q&A, and we have a few questions in the chat already, which is awesome. And I also have a ton of questions. But to be fair to those who ask questions first, I will defer to the chat. So I think the first thing that I think this group would like some clarity about from also Blythe, please join in, is like, what is the relationship between the Parkless Cities program and the city? How did this fit into the city's overall plan?
I'm happy to start with an answer. I don't know that I know the whole answers. So welcome, Daniela, and also Fabiana and Claribel. We just thinking sequentially, Geneva, or to whomever asked that question, we recognized early on that we'd like to do more engagement. And just to sort of emphasize what Daniela just said, I mean, engagement, there's no such thing as too much. It's really about understanding what people want and need. And you can do surveys, you can do Mentimeter, you can do Post-it notes, you can do public meetings, you can go to neighborhood meetings, you can have meetings with council representatives, and on and on and on. And I've always found that the best form of engagement is one-on-one, because that's the kind of engagement that to me presents the least amount of barriers to get really authentic answers from people, to really get to that trust, especially when there's relationships that are already built from community members. So that was a long way of saying we recognize the need, and we work with our state offices here in Chattanooga, and we have a great relationship with the Trust for Public Land. And we started to talk about this opportunity, and we thought that it would be a really good extra service that we could apply to our Parks and Outdoors plan. So as the short answer is, we added it as a component to our Parks and Outdoors plan. City Council approved with extra money that we were able to find in our budget to pay the Trust for Public Land to engage in the process. On the back end, yeah, just to be totally transparent, I think we're struggling right now with how to incorporate the result of the park listener. Maybe I shouldn't say struggling. We haven't quite, we're developing our document. And how the park listeners' responses gets incorporated into everything that we've done. We're still trying to figure out how we make the cake right now. So maybe ask us this question again in 2 or 3 months. But I think that's my answer, is that we added it as a service because we thought we needed it and we had the opportunity to do it. Daniela, what would you add to that?
Yeah, to your point, maybe emphasize that I learned like your budget shows your priorities. So this was like a very official MOU, assigned budget, create a program or to start like kind of creating this like pilot experience. So I'm just going to highlight that. So this is a program that doesn't live in the city. It lives in TPL as a first pilot experience. And then moving forward, we can again kind of have services for the city, but also they're most likely we're gonna use it for our projects. But we have also a contract with the city to clarify too, like our relationship is very established. So I really encourage you, and I think another kind of like learning from here is like, if you can do it, find someone that can do it. And I think this is a very kind of like community response, something that we are all seeing, or most of us are seeing. So we know the city couldn't do it by themselves. We need like this very institution to support and make it very official. And then community members need a support. I saw another question there that so it's a very flexible. The question is like, how can we create flexible structures? So because we were prescribed, we needed some service to recollect service. We were trying to hit some hours per week. But at the end of the day, what we learned is we asked, like, we have a project coming out with Claribel. Claribel, how many hours can you kind of work this per week? 3, is it 4, is it 10? And then when we have the answer, okay, this is the way that we're going to divide them, works for you, doesn't work for you. So it's very flexible for the park listener, because it's also, this is not a full-time job. The idea is to kind of it's a gig at the end of the day. And for some people it can be the only one, other people have other ones. So we kind of like play by ear, but the structure of the program allow us to do that.
I'd also love for you to speak to what it was like to train the park listeners, because I know
Yeah.
I'm very thoughtful.
That was very important for our team, and for me personally too, to kind of like, yes, it's neighbor talking to neighbors, but the conversation has to be intentional. So what we did, and also we were implementing a survey that has the questions already, but it has to have some technicality. What I mean about this, we spent 3 hours reviewing the survey, checking all the sites, where the bathrooms were, what happened if. Of course, you are not gonna like create guidelines for all the situations that can happen, but at least people can know, park listeners can know what to do, who to call. The police was aware when they were out there. They have also signs, we have A-frames, signs that they can put in parks. And then the training also was from like personal experience too. How do you ask someone that doesn't speak your language? Do you assume that they don't speak your language? Do you speak the other language first? Speak in English first? So we create kind of a protocol, or kind of give people tools, kind of like when I see someone, how to approach. And then when you ask for service too, like you can leave the questions, kind of like, oh, this park is awful, even though if the park is awful, kind of how remain neutral and really open the space for the other person to listen. And the other one is like, when you work with service, don't assume that people can actually read, but also don't point out that you don't read. So we kind of like, hey, do you want to answer this? Have this survey, would you like to participate? You want for me to answer for you, or do you want to take your time? So kind of like just give options. Basically, the whole program is like just to give more options to people to engage and reach the unreachable, which is called where people are. Yes, that's the whole, that's up to the city, but the program is there to actually provide that. And because we work so closely with the city, our projects are city projects too. So in the future, we're gonna be implementing this with a schoolyard work. So we're gonna go into some schools and know the school itself, also what is around the school. So yeah, in a few months, we can tell you how to go with the second experience.
Could I kick the question around training over to Claribel and Fabiana? What was your experience like with the trainings?
It was super clear. Part of it was that I had in mind is that because I know a little bit more of the Guatemalan community, those were the perspectives that I had to have, especially the Guatemalan community, to make sure I don't assume that the person does not know how to read, or do I assume that they speak Spanish? And so that was a very clear communication that park listeners had trained us. And so that kind of affirmed and assured me that I was able to do that. And it was, I appreciate the clear communication that they had.
Like they not just left us alone, they actually, when we needed them to actually chaperone us or help us in a situation, they did. They would come out or always communicate with us, and if we had a question or anything like that, they were always there to respond to our questions that we had. And I had most of that, like Fabi said, like I had a lot of people that didn't know how to read, so I had to sit there and actually write the answers for them. And a lot of what Fabi had said before, like a lot of people didn't know if their voices were going to be heard. And I, like, again, they chaperone us to let them know that every survey counts. Every survey is important to park listeners. So yes, their training was very good for us.
Yeah, so I think for questions of clarification, the first experience that we have with park listeners was for the park and outdoor planning, and we had already a relationship with the city of Chattanooga, the park and outdoor office. So all of that was prescribed. We didn't create the survey. The survey was kind of given to us. We translate that survey in Spanish and in Cajoval, which is one of the Mayan dialects, the ones that is more spoken here in the area. So all of that was given to us. Next experience, we're going to create our own materials to engage with people. So most likely it's not going to be a long survey. It's just going to be like questions that can help us to understand people experiences around parks. So that would be like the second phase or second experience.
Thanks, Danny. So there's another question, obviously, around budget. We all want to know how can we budget for this? So curious to hear from Blythe and TPL about budgeting.
Blythe.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm sorry, I was looking at Eric's question, and maybe it's similar. Maybe that's the question you're asking, isn't it?
Yes.
Geneva.
Yeah.
I actually looked it up, and just to emphasize that this was a somewhat of a formal. I can't remember if Daniela, you said this earlier, but this was we specifically requested to the city council, which I think is important, because it's an extra layer of public process that I think is important. And it also legitimizes when the city council approves something. Not everything that we do has to be approved by city council. In this particular case, this one did, because of the total funds that were being asked for. But we had the city council. So when that question got asked, I wanted to make sure I had my numbers right, and I pulled it up. So it's available to anybody if you want to see the council resolution that added it. The budget for this work was $17,500. There was another service that Trust for Public Land provided, so the total was higher than that, but that was the specific cost of the park listeners, and that included several different services that Daniela can go into more detail on if needed, but that was the budget. And I think this got answered, but I'll answer it just in case. The first part of Eric's question, I know Daniela was just talking about the survey was created for them, and they incorporated it into the Park Listeners program. This was not for a specific park project, although I think the Park Listeners program would be extremely useful for a specific park project later. This is for our entire citywide Parks and Outdoors plan, which contemplates over 80 public parks and our greenway system. So we're looking at what are the priorities citywide. But you all, probably everybody on the call, can imagine that if we are going to invest in a specific park, there is another form of listening and another phase of listening that we would need, which gets very specific as to where are people coming from, what are they doing, what are the ways in which they want to use this specific park, so we can incorporate that input into the design of a specific park.
Yeah, and adding to budget, we did the training in-house. So if you have people that have experience already, like doing, like implemented service, and then the scale, it was like 12 people, and we also have one person. So it wasn't one person like on the field in charge of the 12 listeners. So she knew anytime where they were, what park, and then how keep track of like payment too. So the thing maybe can be a bigger investment at the beginning, but then we have now 12 people that we can call for different projects, and we don't have to retrain again. So that's something that maybe to like keep in mind. Also depends how many people are you thinking. And I saw the question there that just around parks. I think this is a human condition that we really need to keep practicing. So I think this can, on my experience, if you want to try something else for sure, but I think park is such a neutral space when we are in communities that I think people, it's a very visual kind of like name, Park Listeners. So it's like, it really gives you the space to start thinking about parks that feel comfortable, and we all have experience with parks. With art, is different, I think, a little bit, because some people feel very removed from arts or closer or don't know what it is. But parks is something that can go, it's like transcultural. We all have parks, as far as I know, or like something that is resemble this experience. So I think that really, really helped us. And we didn't translate the name. That's something that I'm thinking, but in Spanish is parque, so it's very close to. And then again, we have visuals that can help you to like, oh, they're talking about parques. So that's something that we're learning too as we go.
Thank you, Danny. And thank you to our other speakers, Bobby, Claribel, and Blythe. We are going to transition towards our breakout discussion groups. But first, wanted to mention that in January, we are planning on doing a optional deep dive session with Danny to get into the nitty-gritty of Park Listeners. There's so much interest and enthusiasm and great questions in here, and we're going to definitely try and answer all of them more thoroughly in a deep dive. So look out for that invite. And regarding our breakout groups, we have a few topics that many of you selected of interest regarding initial outreach to communities. Those are on the slide. I'm not going to read them, but the questions that we want to dig into for about 30 minutes are what's working well for you regarding this specific subject in your breakout room, and whether there are any policies that have helped you facilitate this approach. What are some barriers, and if you have solutions that you're to offer to those barriers, we would love to hear them as well. And then lastly, how do you implement the data that you're collecting from communities? So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and we will transition into breakout rooms. Thank you.